Before we begin today's episode, two quick announcements. First of all, in the episode, I mention a few times that this is a two-part series, when in fact, no, it is a three-part series. That's right, there's not only going to be a next time, but another next time. The next time's so nice, we did it twice. Secondly, I would like to thank our patrons. So major thank you to Dustin Miller, Dave Jackson, Ryan Yingling, Poppy the Keaton, Eric Guess, Chris Copeline, Charlie Young, Colby Moyer, Cody Dawson, Nikolai at Night, Chris from A Novel Console, Alex from Low 5 Gaming, Backlog Adam, JD, and Adam from Revival and Extinction. Thank you so much for your generous support. If you want to be like these fine group of people, you can head on over to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. We have a variety of tiers to choose from with bonuses at each one. It's never expected, but it is always appreciated. So once again, thank you. And now, let's talk about an underappreciated gem in the JRPG library, Mistwalker's Lost Odyssey. Welcome back to Pixel Project Radio, the video game discussions podcast where we do deep dives and analyze the games that we love and some that you love too. My name is Rick, I am your host, and today we are talking about Lost Odyssey, a JRPG released in 2007 for the Xbox 360. An interesting case, this one. Stick around to the end of the show, as I always say, to hear where you can find us on the internet, our social medias, our Twitters, Discords, Instagrams, all of that good stuff. And as always, I have a really great guest with me today. He is one of the two members of the 3DO podcast. That's right, you heard that right, a podcast all about the system, the 3DO. It's amazing. It's an awesome little show. It's a very cool little device. We are joined today by Thrak. What is up, man? Thank you for joining me.
Hello, man. It's great to be here. We're finally doing this. After months of discussion and moving this back and playing the game, we are finally here talking about the game, and it's great. This is great. I feel good. Thank you for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. I was really excited when you showed interest in doing this. I've been meaning to get to this one forever because it's got an interesting development history and reputation, but we'll get into all of that here pretty soon. If you're a new listener, first of all, welcome. And to our returning listeners, as always, welcome back. New listeners, this episode is going to be split into two parts because it is part of our format where we break down the story beat by beat. We're going to go through the entire story across two episodes, beat by beat, talking about it, analyzing it, giving our thoughts on it. We are not going to spoil anything until we start talking about the story, and even then, we go through it as a book club would do a book. That is to say, we're not going to spoil any plot twists until they happen. So if you've only played like 3 hours, you're good to listen for, however long.
And I even have the book that comes with the game.
It's true. Listeners can't see because podcasts are an auditory medium, but Thrak does have a nice physical copy of Lost Odyssey.
It's very clean. Came with the manual, all 4 discs. That's right, people. It is on 4 DVD discs, and they're all in good shape. But I've been playing the game through the backwards compatibility program on the Xbox Series X, and I gotta say, that is the way to go. Even if you just have, say, one of the 4 discs, you can pop it in and it'll play the game no problem, or it'll install the emulated version. And it cleans up the visuals, gets rid of the load times, and makes it a much smoother experience overall. It's still perfectly fine on the 360, but for it to be a little bit more modern, which is weird to say for a game that doesn't feel like it's that old, the Series X is the way to go. Or a Series S.
Absolutely. I'm playing it on my Series X as well. It's been terrific. So for folks that have maybe never heard of this, they might be wondering, what is Lost Odyssey? Well, let's give a quick debrief. Lost Odyssey is a turn-based JRPG, and one of the few 360 JRPG exclusives at that, wherein players take the role of Kaim Argonar, an amnesiac immortal. As political turmoil reaps the surrounding nations, what begins as a simple task to observe construction of a government-funded magic facility quickly turns into a journey to regain lost memories and temper deceit from the duplicitous minds seeking to control political power. Kaim is joined by Seth Balmore, a fellow immortal who also lacks her memory, Jansen Freed, a fast-talking womanizer skilled in magic, and a few more along the way as we seek to discover the truth of our pasts and the origin of our stolen memories.
That sounds like it should have been the back of the box. That was beautiful.
That is the highest praise I could have asked for. Thank you, man.
No problem.
I always love slipping that word duplicitous in. I love that word.
Yeah. It's a big fancy word.
One of those $10 words, you know?
$10 words, yes.
Yeah, you could take it down to the store. You could buy a lot of candy with that.
It's a Hamilton.
Yeah. God. So we are, since this is broken into two parts and since I have never played this game before, a lot of this is going to be, we're going to be talking in broad terms across both episodes. So we can't really give a true rating, or at least I can't, at the top. And, by the way, for new listeners, our ratings don't mean anything. Anyways, it's just a way to have fun. But for now, Thrak, I think you've played this game before, haven't you?
A little bit. I've never beaten it before.
Oh, okay.
It's weird with this game. I feel like I've always known about it. Because when this game came out in 2007 on the 360, as many people know, Japanese game developers were struggling at the beginning of the HD era. Just trying to keep up with the technology. You had, Microsoft at the front with the Xbox 360 being the industry leader at that point. Sony struggling out the gate with the PS3 infamously, and Nintendo just wanting people to, waggle their forearms like crazy in a non-sexual way, we swear. So the gaming industry was in a very interesting spot at this point, and you had a lot of these Western developers start to pop up, like, your BioWares and your Bethesdas really coming into their own in the RPG realm. So companies like, say, Square Enix or Capcom or Konami, these notable Japanese devs, some who did RPGs, some who didn't, really struggling. And, I can say Square Enix because despite this not being a Square Enix game, it is very heavily tied to Square Enix, not just in manpower behind the game, but also the way the game, plays and looks and the pacing. It feels very Square Enix. Like you could imagine Square Enix having this in their back catalog, but it isn't.
Absolutely. And we're going to get into a lot of those similarities and how it shows its Final Fantasy DNA specifically once we get into, how the game plays and the development history. For now, and we'll revisit this next time too, I wanted to ask you, just as far as you've gotten at this point, how many, if you had to rate it, how many inappropriate Jansen moments out of 10 would you give this one?
I like that. I would give this, honestly, I would probably give it like either an 8.5 or a 9.
Okay.
Which sounds very high, and it is, but I'm trying to rate it in terms of comparing it to the other JRPGs that existed at this particular time. Because as you said, it was one of the few 360 exclusive JRPGs, and still is technically exclusive to the 360. It's never gotten a PC port or anything like that. And for its era, it is one of the stronger games in its genre, because I think like Final Fantasy 12, I believe, was the year before this on the PS2. And, 12 is its own beast. And then 13 came a couple years after this, and that is still a polarizing game for a lot of people. So it's begun a cult following, or it's had a cult following for many years. Like if you YouTube Lost Odyssey, you'll see all these people saying, oh, I finally played it for the first time, or, oh, we're sleeping on this masterpiece of a game. Though I think every game that's above like a 6 out of 10 released in the last like 30 years has at least one YouTube video calling it a hidden gem masterpiece. I think Lost Odyssey is special. It is a familiar game. in a lot of ways compared to, say, your Final Fantasies of the time. It feels familiar, but it has a freshness to it that makes it stick out in some ways, and not just the console that it's on, but also I think just what they are trying to do with this game is a little different than the sort of Final Fantasy formula in a sense. And I think from what I've played, it really succeeds. It does have issues. It is not perfect. Like most JRPGs, there are issues that kind of plague the genre as a whole, and then some other little things that are some odd choices here and there. But overall, I do not regret my time with this game at all. I think it is well worth a play, especially if you like JRPGs.
Yeah, well said. Well said. I'm going to keep my thoughts brief because they're largely in line with yours. This is sitting like at a strong 7.5 out of 10 for me. 7.5 out of 10 inappropriate Jansen moments. Might change by the time we get to the end. There's a lot that's special about this title, but like you said, it does have some stumbling points that we're going to get to even today, talking about some of the format of the way things look. In addition to our thoughts, we also have thoughts from our community forum.
Oh boy.
Yeah, can't you hear the cheering?
Oh, no.
For those that are new, the community forum is a channel in our Discord server where I let everybody know what game we're playing or what topic we're talking about, and invite everybody to give their thoughts to be read on the show. And we got a couple today. We might have a couple next time for all of those that, maybe just haven't had a chance to check it out. But today we've got two. The first one comes from Dave Jackson from Tales from the Backlog.
Hi, Dave.
Hello, Dave. Here's what he has to say. I played Lost Odyssey back in 2012 or so, starved for RPGs as the owner of only an Xbox 360 at the time. I remember loving how it explored the life of an immortal with some really great pieces of writing. I also remember grinding in a late-game dungeon until my party was literally immune to every type of magic, making the final bosses an absolute breeze. I plan to replay it, quote, soon, but for now, I'll enjoy experiencing it vicariously through Pixel Project Radio. Well, Dave, we hope you enjoy this experience with us, don't we, Thrak?
Yes, we do. And it's funny that after he posted that, I think he posted a picture in the Discord of he got a 360 and a copy of it. I think he spent like $70 for the both of them, which isn't bad at all.
Yeah, this is where we start chanting, one of us, one of us. He's becoming a collector. We love to see it.
It's funny he mentioned the 360 and the lacking of RPGs, because I really wasn't an RPG person when this came out in 2007. If I remember, I was deep in my Rainbow Six Vegas phase. Back then, I used to rent video games all the time from my local Family Video, if anybody knows that place. And yeah, it was like when I rediscovered this game, when I saw the cover, I'm like, that looks familiar, that I've like seen it before. But maybe it was just like it didn't register at the time, And it was, again, as I had mentioned, that era where Japanese gaming was kind of like a taboo thing, unless you were like one of the nerdy nerd kind of people. And I remember when Soul Calibur 4 came out, that was big in my like group of friends, because some people had the PS3 version, so they're like, oh, we have Darth Vader, but I had the 360 version. I'm like, well, I have Yoda, who's fucking better anyways. So, and you eventually got to play as both of them through DLC patches. But yeah, it's a game that I don't know how it would have felt at the time when it came out, because it was a long time till I finally got into JRPGs.
It's a great genre. It remains one of my favorites. Well, no, it remains my absolute favorite to this day.
It's climbing up there for me.
We do have one more piece of correspondence. This one comes from Chris Copleen from the Retro Hangover podcast. Here's what he has to say. Lost Odyssey is a game that I recommend to any fan of Final Fantasy. It definitely feels, looks, and sounds like where I thought the series would have gone after 10. While the gameplay and its mechanics are great, and the addition of Saknoth staff from Shadow Hearts is noticeable in a positive way, the real star of the show is the game's story and its storytelling. This especially is true in the first disc. Few games have immersed me and made me care about the world and the people in it as much as Lost Odyssey has. And if those hooks take hold, you have to read all the short stories. They are absolutely brilliant, and they flesh out and provide meaningful context to a solemn yet hopeful world. Also, the first and only game where I had to put a game, Disc 4, in boiling water in order to play it. That is a thing. Trust me, look it up.
It is a thing. I checked.
Yeah, that's I've only ever heard of the toothpaste thing, which I've never tried personally, but I've have you done the boiling water trick?
No. In my playing this on the 360, I only really played through disc 1, and on the Series X, it's just one big digital file.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened with the fourth disc. It must have been an issue at, the manufacturing, I guess. It's just it's weird, and it's weird that it sits with a console that was infamous for its own hardware issues. Like imagine having Lost Odyssey, right? Playing through the first 3 discs, you get to the fourth disc, and for some reason you have to boil it in water, and then you go through all that to get it to play, and you play it for a little bit, and then your Xbox Red rings on you. I don't think we could fathom that today, because I don't think any of the big 3 would get away with something like that, or would want to get away with something like that ever again.
No, absolutely not.
It was such a weird anomaly at the time,
Yeah, and it still scares people away from those systems today, like me. That's why I don't collect for 360. Let's dive into some development history for this game. So, Lost Odyssey, this was developed by a studio called Feel Plus and published by Microsoft Game Studios. I looked up Feel Plus. They also went by Scarab at another point in time. They have developed games such as Fighting Vipers 2, the Dreamcast port, Ju-On the Grudge, No More Heroes, Heroes Paradise. Not a whole lot, but they don't seem to be active anymore today. They went defunct in 2010. This game was directed by Daisuke Fukugawa, written by none other than Hironobu Sakaguchi, the Gooch, and Kiyoshi Shigematsu. We're going to talk more about him later. He's very important. Joining them is Nobuo Uematsu. That's right. This is practically a Final Fantasy game, and I dare say this is treading into the Dream Team territory that we saw with Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, a little bit. I like your nickname for Sakaguchi. It makes him sound like a hockey player.
The Gooch, dude. I don't remember where I picked it
Gooch.
up from. I did not think of it myself, but that's how I refer to him all the time.
Yeah.
I would never do that to his face. And in the off chance that he ever hears my podcast, I'm sorry.
You wouldn't show him your Gooch?
I don't think I would show him my Gooch. Maybe if he asked politely, gave me a little bow, I would be like, okay.
Like very nicely, yes.
Yeah, it would have to be very nice.
Yeah, it's interesting you refer to this as almost like a Dream Team kind of collab for Chrono Trigger, when in some ways it feels like just a dev team for like Final Fantasy 9 or Final Fantasy 10, and Sakaguchi was still there still having control of the series, as it were, because I think it was around like early 2000s when they did that movie, Spirit Within, I think, that bombed.
Mm-hmm. And that was a large reason that Mistwalker was formed to begin with.
Yeah, because Sakaguchi, I think, lost a lot of his political power at Square after that. And in fact, that was before the merger. In fact, they had been the Square and Enix merger, which I think were already in the works to do. But then when that movie bombed, Enix kind of backed away. And it took Final Fantasy X and Kingdom Hearts being successful for Enix to come back to the table to when they officially merged in 2004.
This concept was originally pitched to Microsoft by Sakaguchi himself in 2003. It was going to be a collaboration between Microsoft and Mistwalker, which, like we just talked about, was the studio that the Gooch set up after he left Squeenix. Free Plus was only brought on to assist with development specifically after there were some internal dev difficulties. Not like personality. I just what I gleaned from reading about it was just like workload and developing for new systems, stuff like that, new architecture.
Yeah.
The included staff that were brought on were from Shadow Hearts and Legend of Dragoon, which is pretty darn cool. Mistwalker took care of the whole story and characters, and Free Plus developed the actual product, which I guess is like coding and shit like that.
Yeah, basically, Mistwalker, they're not your typical dev studio. Like, they don't do, like the hardline coding or the programming and all that kind of stuff, or even like the gameplay systems they didn't really do. Like Sakaguchi, of course, made sure everything was good to go. But yeah, they were working on like basically the art side. Because video games, you have the art side and you have the technology side, basically. So Mistwalker usually handles the art side, and then they'll get like a Feel Plus or somebody else to do that other side for them. Because I believe for Blue Dragon, they had another team do the programming and the gameplay aspect. I forget who it is off the top of my head, but even with Fantasian, their iOS game, that was a surprise hit. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, a surprise hit. Given the circumstances, I'm not sure that most folks have played it that I know, honestly.
I know one person who's played it. I would really like to play it, but I'm not going to get Apple Arcade just to play one game. So
yeah.
I've heard rumors of a PC port potentially in the works or whatever, and I would love to play it on Steam. I don't normally play games on my PC, but I would do it for that game because it looks really cool.
Some of this information that we're going to talk about now, I wanted to shout out the Resonant Arc channel, which I feel like I do constantly. They're just some of the most top-notch guys doing games analysis. They have a great video on Lost Odyssey. It's highly likely that the decision to make this a 360 exclusive as opposed to, the PS3, it's highly likely that this was due to an internal beef. The 360 obviously was not super successful in Japan, and in a June 2007 issue of Electronic Gaming Monthly, Sakaguchi said the following. He says, quote, "I'm not interested in the PlayStation 3. The machine's architecture is tricky, and I don't like Ken Kutaragi," who was Sony Computer Entertainment's chairman and CEO at the time.
Yeah.
Given how little success Xbox had seen in Japan, it's very believable to me that the latter part of that sentence holds the most weight, that he just didn't get along with Kutaragi. And indeed, some of Sony's employees, I forgot to write this in the notes, but they have been on record as like calling Kutaragi moody and very micromanagey. So it tracks. I don't know how accurate it is, but it does track.
Yeah, Kutaragi was a polarizing figure in Sony. Like, he was the guy responsible for the PS1 and PS2 taking off the way that they did. But by the time you get to the PS3, you could tell his ego was very high. And a lot of the issues that the PS3 had through the first half of its life, you can almost attribute to Kutaragi kind of pushing it very far. And also, a part of the whole Sakaguchi-Kutaragi issue was when Sakaguchi left to form Mistwalker, he was looking for, investors, basically publishers, to help fund his independent projects. And I think the first one he went to was Sony, and talked with Kutaragi, and they just really couldn't come to an agreement on anything. And I think basically Kutaragi was like, "Oh, we'd rather work with your old company than you." I think was kind of the idea that he was just kind of like, blackballing him, basically. And so Sakaguchi is like, "Well, why don't I talk to Microsoft?" They seem to, despite not being very successful in Japan still, this time they were really trying to court Japanese developers, publishers. They were trying to get them on their side as best as they could. Hell, some of the Dead or Alive games were released exclusively on Xbox and still are. So he went to Microsoft and was like, "Hey, would you, fund my projects?" And they're like, "Absolutely." And so, Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey, the two big ones, were all published and funded by Microsoft to help bolster the 360's line of Japanese games, which they hoped would sell the 360 more in Japan, which it did.
That makes sense. Even though I think most folks over here probably have less experience with Lost Odyssey and certainly Blue Dragon, it makes sense that they would have done so well in Japan. It's the right market for it.
Yeah, and I imagine there were Japanese gamers who bought a 360 just to play those games, played those games, beat them, and then never touched their Xbox ever again.
Oh, absolutely. Sakaguchi is the one that wrote the story for this game, but I did mention another writer that is largely credited in Lost Odyssey. That is famed Japanese novelist Kiyoshi Shigematsu. And he came in to write The Thousand Years of Dreams. And I want to talk about those right now. But before I do, I wanted to read this really great quote from Sakaguchi that I found talking about that. Here's what he says. He says, quote, "My biggest desires with Lost Odyssey was to make an innovative game that would incite players' emotions. So I took a less risky way and made a traditional style game, but put a lot of effort into the stories in the game. My wish is that players will be absorbed into the conflicts and moral dilemmas in Lost Odyssey. I'm most happy when I see a tear in the eye of someone playing Lost Odyssey." I think these are several different quotes. That's why you're hearing Lost Odyssey so much. "I wish for people to not play the game without paying attention to the story and the difficult situations they will face. This game is appealing to players' emotions even further. It has received a reputation as the very first game that made me have tears in my eyes from Japanese players. I was most pleased by that comment. My overall target for the game is I want players to identify with the characters' attitudes of trying to be kind to others while embracing many conflicts and depressions within themselves, rather than a cold and vacant feeling." That's a lot. And I think Sakaguchi succeeded with what he was trying to do. What I find interesting here is that the writing quality and the storytelling quality, in my opinion, is not close at all between The Thousand Years of Dreams and the main stories, the main quest's story. The stuff written by Shigematsu is far and away higher quality. And I don't mean that to disparage Sakaguchi or the writers that actually wrote the script. I really don't. But it's a testament to Shigematsu's extreme prowess with words. I don't know, Thrak, do you feel the same way?
Yes, I do. The one quote that stuck out to me was this was being the very first game that it was. I assume it's either like it that he noticed Japanese players crying at, or that made him cry, which that says a lot because there's been quite a few famous emotional moments in Final Fantasy games, like the opera scene in 6, Aerith's death in 7, and so on, and a lot of the moments in 10 as well. So for this to have that sort of impact on him and then other players does say a lot to the writing. And yes, the writing in the 1,000 Year Dreams is fantastic. It is easily the best part of this game, in my opinion, are like the side stories, which in a way does kind of hurt the main plot of the game, as you said. Because, yeah, those 1,000 Year Dreams are written so well. Like, we can get more into the details of them later, but they are just so well done. They even got me emotional, over just kind of just random little things that happen, and it's an example of gaming starting to use, like, lore and side stories to do most of the heavy lifting, whereas, like, the main quest is just kind of light. And we still see that today, like, say, in a more extreme situation like a Dark Souls where they don't tell you anything except in the side stuff. Lost Odyssey has most of the emotion, the heavy lifting of the emotion done in the side stories, which is a curious choice, I think.
Yes. The side stories, these are called the 1,000 Years of Dreams. They appear in the stories as, well, dreams. It's in the title because our main character is an immortal and he has lost his memories. He's regaining them slowly as he goes along. None of them are, how to put this? None of them are critical to understanding the bare bones plot of Lost Odyssey. However, I would argue that they are critical to understanding the themes, the main character's motivations, and so on and so forth. I do not view them as optional, personally. I really do not.
I would agree. If you want that emotional connection to the characters, the way many great RPGs do, you have to, basically go into the 1,000 Year Dreams and read those and get those experiences. And you can just read them, say, like on wikis as well, on like other websites or whatever. But the sort of almost visual novel experience that you get from the 1,000 Year Dreams is part of it as well. And, it's very well worth just sitting down and going through them, either when you get them or you can just kind of load up whenever you want. But yeah, they're so well done. They're definitely worth your time.
Yeah, we're going to talk about them more in the next episode as well. That the style is kind of similar to a visual novel, kind of similar to a Japanese sound novel like Higurashi When They Cry, which is on my list to read very, very soon. I wanted to read it for this episode, but I just didn't have the time. The only criticisms I really have of the Thousand Years of Dreams is that the visual effects are very like early 2000s PowerPoint. You've got like the text is in papyrus. It's doing like different animations every time, like swirling in, doing little loop-de-loops. Like every PowerPoint animation, it's in here.
Yes.
It's so silly. And there's an element of that comes back into the visuals with the camera work, which we'll talk about in a moment. But that's really the only thing that high key dates this game is how they utilize some of their visual effects.
Yeah, but it makes up for it by having like the background art and then the kind of ambient music that's behind it as you're reading it really heighten up the emotional parts as well.
Yeah, you want to hear something tragic is that so Xbox sucks and you can't use a lot of external or third-party headphones with their systems.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. So I bought headphones to use with my Xbox, and it turns out, I think this is a known issue with their first-party wireless headset, which is insane to me. But with Lost Odyssey specifically, I get a constant crackling, and in the battles and stuff, it didn't make a huge deal. But in the Thousand Years of Dreams, it was so distracting. So I can't use them. And I tested other games. I tested, series games, Xbox One, Blinks the Time Sweeper from original Xbox. It doesn't happen on any other game. It's just this one, and I can't find anything to fix it online. It's ridiculous, man.
That is very strange. I haven't heard that, because the headphones I'm using right now, they're the official Xbox, but they're the wired ones. Because I think the wireless ones are like $100, and then these were like $40. So I was like, I'll just get these. I'll just plug in. I don't care. And I haven't had an issue with the wired ones. Like wireless headphones, I mean, they're fine for like the earbuds, but these, I would just rather plug it into the bottom of a controller and not have to worry about it,
That's true. That would have been the smarter decision on my part.
They're very cheap.
Before we move into visuals, I wanted to shout out the localizer for these, Jay Rubin, who is an academic and one of the most respected Japanese literary translators. I think he still works at Harvard. He was working at Harvard at the time, but his translations are impeccably well done. And Japanese is not always a language that is idiomatic to translate into English. He is actually a staunch pacifist and had no interest in video games because of the warlike themes that are in so many of them. But after he sampled some of the writing, he said that they struck him as almost Buddhist in nature, and he was really relieved to hear that the themes were largely anti-war. So he agreed, and goddamn, he just did a great job.
Yes.
And I want to leave off with one more Sakaguchi quote. I know I've got a lot of them, but I got so excited researching this. Here's what Sakaguchi says about Kiyoshi Shigematsu. Quote, "The reason I've used Kiyoshi Shigematsu as part of this project is because we don't see enough emotion in video games yet." Remember, this is the early 2000s. "Whether to do with family or some other emotional elements, something that brings tears to your eyes. The main element in these games is often fighting or whatever, but I want these emotional elements. I think the main character, who has been living for 1,000 years and can't die, he has 1,000 years of memories, and that creates a lot of emotional moments." End quote. I think that's so interesting that Sakaguchi, of all people, is saying that there's not enough emotion in video games.
I can agree with that, because if you play some older games, even some of the older Final Fantasies, when they're trying to be emotional, they're trying really hard. But I could see why he would say, like, say the opera scene in 6 is limited by the technology they have at the time, or a lot of the more emotional moments in Chrono Trigger, which are very well done for their time. You could see maybe for him it's like they're just not working in the way that he's picturing them in his head. And with the technology getting better, we're getting closer to that. But it's so interesting that the most emotional moments in this game aren't with the very, high quality visuals and that storytelling. It is through the papyrus text PowerPoint font stuff that, is a tearjerker. And one interesting thing about Thousand Year Dreams is in Japan, they collected all the stories together in a book, like a physical book, and released it. And as far as I know, there's never been an English translation of that. And I think that is a shame. I would love to have a physical version of this and actually sit there and read them like a book. It's a shame we've never gotten that. And at this point, we probably never will get that.
Yep, I'm adding it to the pile. We've got Perfect Works for the Xeno series. We've got the shitty Final Fantasy 10.5 or 10.2.3, whatever that garbage is. We've got this. I'll read them one day, once I can get my skills up. They're very good. We will talk more about the 1,000 Years of Dreams in the next episode after we have gone through and read them all. But for now, let's talk about visuals. This is going to be super quick. I don't really have a lot to say about it. And indeed, we've kind of summarized our thoughts on visuals pretty well so far. It looks good for the time. It looks even better on a more powerful console like the Series X or Series S. The major complaint I have about the visuals is not like character design. It's not monster design. It's nothing like that. It is, they do a lot of picture-in-picture in this game. Picture-in-picture, split screen down the middle, split screen horizontally. And it gives a very, I don't want to say amateurish, but I'm going to, because in 2023, that's how it's viewed. It gives an amateurish feel to it. There is so much picture-in-picture, man. It's like a high school project. And I hate saying that. I know in 2003, 2005, 2007, I know it wasn't viewed as that way because I was doing that shit in high school for projects. But man, it has not aged well. And in some scenes, it actively detracted from the drama and from the storytelling.
I think the idea behind those cuts, which to me, they just look like a 2000s like NCIS type cut. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just gives that vibe. I think what he's trying to go for is have, you get to see multiple characters, reactions like in real time to what's going on, right? Which is, I think it's the idea, but and maybe he's slightly influenced by, say, like the Nintendo DS with how you can have two different things happening on two different screens. And some games utilize that for cutscenes. And maybe he's trying to do a little bit of that. But I agree, it does kind of clash with the overall sort of traditional style of like, camera work and the way they construct the cutscenes as they go. It clashes in a very like strange way because it's not consistent. It doesn't happen all the time. So when it does, it's like, oh, shit, So, but yeah, I agree. The game looks very well for its time, and the Series X does a really good job of bumping the visuals up. And usually when you emulate games like these, you get better character models, but the sort of low-res background assets tend to, not keep up. So you can kind of notice the sort of low-res stuff there. But even then, it still looks pretty solid. Like if it was, say, a new game, I don't think people would say it looks terrible. They would just say it looks like it's lacking something. You know what I mean? But for 07, it's very high production value.
Yeah. I really don't think anybody could denounce the graphical fidelity. I could see people not being into the art direction. The landscapes are all very like, I think fantasy meets art deco kind of deal. High fantasy meets art deco, I should say. It's kind of like that. The character models look good. I mean, they're not as vibrant or colorful or whimsical as some of the Final Fantasy games that we've seen, specifically thinking of like 9. But
yeah.
The art direction is really solid. I don't think that's rarely something that you can, and I do say rarely because it does happen, but that's rarely something you can criticize the teams at Square Enix for.
Well, I think with, say, Tetsuya Nomura, right? His sort of infinite...
Oh, here he goes. Here he is. Tetsuya Nomura's here, baby.
Chalk him on the board. He's one of those guys that he has such a unique art style that it has sort of influenced every RPG ever since. But with Lost Odyssey, there is a little bit of that. sort of that Nomura style, particularly with the characters, but it's not as out there as he can get, It still has a sort of, I guess, a practicality to it in a way. And yeah, like the architecture is very sort of like magic industrial revolution type stuff, like very like early 20th century kind of smokestacks, but instead of smoke, it's just like magic energy coming out of them. And then you have these like giant sort of like, like grandfather clock, whatever the swinging thing is called, those...
It's not dissimilar to Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah. Or even a 7 in a way, because 7 goes for that more kind of industrial look. It's like somewhere in the middle, I think. And yeah, some people could complain about the lack of color palette. I mean, it was that era of, browns and grays and everything. But I think the lack of color in this game is meant to emphasize how, in a way, depressing this entire world is. You know what I mean? It feels like it was an artistic choice. It wasn't doing it because it was the thing to do. It's not a resistance game. It definitely kind of serves this sort of dour nature that the game kind of puts you in. You know what I mean? And there are splashes of color here and there, but not a huge amount. So I feel like it was intentional, being kind of like beigey,
Yeah, and for better or for worse, this was kind of the era where things started to become very brown, like you said, the resistance style.
Mm-hmm.
It was just a period of game design, and thank God we're past it. Now we're into just blacks and grays. Thank God, he said, dripping with sarcasm. Let's talk a little bit about how this game plays. So anybody that's played a Final Fantasy game before, you're going to mostly be at home, especially if you've played 10 or 12. The overworld is one of your main hubs. You're going to be running, you're going to be picking up loot, talking to NPCs, saving at save points, things like that. The only thing different here, as opposed to like Final Fantasy X, let's say, is you've got a sprint button, which is hilarious because your character just zooms faster than anybody should be able to run. It's very, very funny. You also have one weird mechanic, and I really don't know why it's in here. You can press the right trigger, I think it is, while in the overworld to zoom in. It's like a camera zoom. That's all it is. I can't figure out why in the world this is here. I never use it. Never, ever, ever.
You accidentally use it once in a while.
Yeah, that's that's all it's good for, is accidentally hitting it and then saying like, oh, God damn it, or something, something like that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like if you're playing like a point and click adventure or like a Professor Layton or something, and they want you to zoom in on like a clue or something, right? But there's never any use for it to like, oh, zoom in on this like particular spot to find this like hidden secret or something. Like that doesn't happen. So
yeah.
Maybe they just wanted you to be like, oh, this game is so beautiful, I want to zoom in on it.
Or, I mean, they use zoom in a lot as well in the camera effects. So maybe it's just like, maybe that was just their philosophy here. They just wanted it to be, quote, cinematic, but, cinematic at the time meant tons of camera zooms and picture-in-picture and shit like that.
We have so many buttons. What do we do with all these buttons?
Yeah, we got to use every button.
Exactly.
Unacceptable to not use a button. Speaking of buttons, actually, the more interesting mechanic to talk about are the battles. And there are a couple of things that I wanted to touch on. This battle system is a traditional turn-based. This is not the active time battle that Final Fantasy has used since, I'm pretty sure, 4.
Yes.
It is traditional turn-based. At the beginning of each round, you select all of your character's actions, and then they play out according to your character's speed stats in order. And, your enemy's speed stats as well. I don't mind this. It does make battles feel a bit longer than I would like.
Yeah.
Some of the battles, especially because there are, that's right, everybody say it with me, there are random battles in this game.
Ooh,
the crowd goes wild.
Random encounters. They don't exist anymore.
Yeah, thank God. It does make them drag out a little bit sometimes, but I am also an ATB like super fan. Like I love the ATB system. I think it's great.
See, that's where we differ. I don't like ATB at all.
You prefer traditional turn-based?
Yes, because Final Fantasy X got rid of the ATB and just has it just like traditional turn-based, and that's
and
probably
then 10-2 perfected the ATB.
Yeah,
you ask me.
Yeah, my issue with ATB is that it gives me a lot of anxiety because I'm just like sitting there waiting for that bar to fill up while enemies are attacking me, and it feels like I can't, you know. Because what I like about Dragon Quest so much is the traditional, like I just go in the menus, I select my things, and then the thing happens. You know, I can sit there and sort of watch the science project kind of unroll. And Lost Odyssey is much closer to that, but it does take some things from 10, like showing the turn order in the corner of like who's going to go, which is really nice because it allows you to sort of think ahead, be like, okay, I can use this person to do that and that to do that. Or it doesn't show you until you select all the options, but you learn as you play the game. It's like, oh, if I use an item, that's the first thing, like almost every time. And some characters will attack faster. If you use magic, it'll usually be near the end, or there's certain magic that takes like multiple turns to actually get going, or some enemies can knock you into doing that. So there is a bit of strategy with that, which I think is done pretty well. And yeah, the ATB was just never my thing. Chrono Trigger is probably the best instance of ATB.
That's a good one.
I think Chrono Trigger's battle system in general is very, very good.
Yeah. If you want to hear us talk about Chrono Trigger, we did 2 episodes a while back on it. And, you know, maybe in the future we'll revisit it. I don't know. This battle system also introduces something called GC, or guard condition. Guard condition or guard conditional. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
I think it's guard condition.
This is an interesting little thing that I didn't pay attention to at first. And then there was a mini boss that wrecked me because I wasn't paying attention to it. And it's a great way to tutorialize something, I suppose. What this is your guard condition is made up of the HP, or HP, if you are our friends across the pond, of your members in the front line. So you can swap people between front line and back line, and your guard condition will be the HP of everybody in front. What guard condition does is it protects your folks in the back. So what I like to do, for example, is I keep 2 of our immortal characters, Seth and Kaim, in front because they're very beefy, they're very tanky, and they can take it. And then I keep the weaker spellcasters in the back because they have significantly less HP. I don't know why I find that funny. And as long as you have guard condition, they're going to take less damage. Now, as your guard condition runs low, they're going to start taking more damage, and once it's completely gone, they're going to start getting hit really, really hard. So it's important to keep that up. You can keep it up with special abilities, you can equip abilities to increase your GC when you defend. Using items to restore your HP, that does not increase guard condition, right?
No, because I think the guard condition is based on the health that your characters are at when they start the fight. Yeah. So once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, and you really don't want that to happen because your party can get wiped, and that really sucks, you know?
Yeah. I feel like it's an interesting idea that isn't explored enough, you know, because it relates to the whole frontline backline system, which is a neat idea. And I think other games like, say, Suikoden do that as well. But I think Suikoden has a lot more strategy involved with it.
I don't mean to interrupt. You know, I've never played a Suikoden game.
I've played a little bit of one of them, but I've watched a lot of videos, and I know they also do the frontline, backline thing as well. But it also is kind of carried over from Final Fantasy games where it's like the older, like some of the ATB ones where you'll have some characters in front and some characters in back. It's almost like it's just kind of keeping with that tradition where it's obvious you're going to put your attack people in front and then your spellcasters in the back, obviously. But the game, in my opinion, doesn't do a lot with maybe trying to mess with that. There is one boss fight, I won't say which one, where the boss actually does mess with your frontline, backline, how you have it set up. It challenges that perception, which I think is really neat, and I wish the game did that a little bit more, you know, because it's a neat idea that, especially with the guard condition, like I think it's a really neat idea, but I just don't think it's explored enough in the combat, you know?
Yeah, I'm okay with how it's explored. I don't know. I don't think I you're farther than I am in this story. I don't think I've encountered that boss yet, unless I'm just completely forgetting. But
I think you would remember because I don't want to I don't want to say what it is. I don't want to say.
okay, yeah, no worries, no worries.
All I'll say is it's at disc 3.
Oh yeah, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's explored okay. What's a boon to the GC is the fact that this is traditional turn-based. If this were trying to be implemented in an ATB system, it would be a little too much. Like that's
Yes.
when my anxiety would go up. If I would also have to manage my ATB bar. No good, no good. So this is nice
agree.
because if you have to do a lot of strategizing with a traditional turn-based game, you're thinking a lot. It makes it feel less dull. So I like this. I'm a big fan of it. It's good.
It is weird how some people find traditional turn-based games kind of dull, whereas like I think, say like in Dragon Quest XI, for example, I really enjoy how like sort of laid back that combat is because it gives me time to sort of think and plan everything out. Like I don't need to be on my toes at all times every time. You know what I mean? Sometimes I need that, but other times I just want to just kind of lay back and be like, okay, this guy's going to attack and then she's going to throw the magic, and having that sort of slower pace can be a benefit for a lot of people. And I think that's why I say Japanese gamers really like these games for that slow pace. They don't feel like they need to rush through it.
Yeah, if you like your Dragon Quests, if you like your original Final Fantasies, if you like your Divinity Original Sins.
Your Baldur's Gate 3.
I haven't played it, man. It's been
I haven't
installed
either.
since I bought it. I just don't have the time.
I'm waiting for the Xbox version.
I know it's going to consume me whenever I'm ahead on games right now, like Lost Odyssey not included. I'm ahead on games and I might start it, but I also want to get ahead for 2024 because we were talking off mic. I am like constantly just like at the deadlines here with editing and stuff. So I want to get ahead, but I'm going to get there.
Yeah, I only have 2, maybe 3 games that came out this year that I want to get finished. And then I've said in some of the other Discords, next year I want it to be like a backlog year. Like I want to just kind of clean out as much of my old games as I can. And if there's a new game, with very few exception, I won't get it day one because it's like I'm just going to buy it and then it's just going to sit there and I'm not going to play it.
Yeah.
So might as well just wait.
Yeah, that's my philosophy too. Patient gamers. It's a great subreddit, and I am one of them. There is one thing in this battle system I actively dislike, and that is the ring system. So we have to talk about this in 2 parts. So the ring system, really, I mean, the first half of it is basically just an equipment setting, right? You are equipping these rings. They give you buffs, right? They do... your attack is increased, your increased damage against machines, increased critical hits, you might do water damage, things like that. So far, so good.
Yeah.
The thing that I don't like is they implemented a real-time button press mechanic in the battle, not dissimilar to Super Mario RPG, Legend of Dragoon, the new Sea of Stars, things like that. But the reason I don't like it is not because it's a real-time button press in combat, it's because of how it materializes on the screen. The way it shows is there will be a ring on the screen, and it will get slightly smaller as your turn goes by. Each turn, if you're physically attacking, your character is like running across enemy lines to attack, which after a while gets a little bit old, but neither here nor there. And when you do that, you first hold down the right trigger. That causes a second ring to come in from the outside, and you have to time it when the ring is in the center of the initial ring to release the right trigger, and you will, if done perfectly, get a perfect. If done decently, get a good. And if done poorly or not at all, you get a bad. The reason that I don't like this, first of all, is because it's not always like the difference between bad and perfect is really not that much. It's quite minor, but it's difficult to see the ring when it's inside of the initial ring. It is like you almost have to get it down to muscle memory, like feel of just how long to hold it down. It is like I don't know about you, Thrakman, but like Thrakman is my nickname for you, by the way.
That's fine.
I don't know about you, but like I cannot see the right trigger ring inside of the first ring. I really cannot. I've tried. I can't do it.
It is weird because there is sort of that like kind of faded gray ring that's in the center of the enemy, and then like the normal light color ring as you go in. And yeah, it's weird to time. It feels like they added it because maybe they realized that adding more active elements in turn-based battles is like becoming the future. You know, I mean, you had like, you know, the Paper Mario games doing a fantastic job of it. And more recent examples would be games like, say, Persona 5 or Yakuza Like a Dragon, who both add really good action elements into traditional turn-based combat. And yeah, here it's there just to, I guess, give you something to do while you're watching the super long animations, you know, which are very nice, but, you know, after a while it does kind of get grating. And yeah, the difference between, perfect and bad, it doesn't really amount to all that much. It's not the same as, say, like a Paper Mario, like Thousand Year Door, for example, which, you know, timing those perfectly, like, yeah, you'll get maybe an extra 1 or 2, like, hit points, but in that game, every point matters because they're so low. Like, I think the max Mario health can get in that is 50, you know, so they make each number count. But when you're in, you know, this kind of land where the numbers are huge and, you know, just are kind of all over the place, it doesn't, as you said, make that big of a difference. But yeah, the ring system in the battle is just not done very well. Like, I think they were trying to do something different, but they didn't want it to be that different.
Yeah, I strongly prefer it implemented in ways like in Legend of Dragoon, where it is, you know, you just press X. You know, there is no input, there is no press and release, right? And that's going to be part of it too. And especially playing on LCD monitors, I mean, even with the newer systems, there's some level of input delay, and you might be sensitive to it. I am a little bit, but not as much as some other folks and some other servers I'm a part of. I would rather it just be press, and that's it.
Sorry, I just remembered something about the ring system, and that is there's that little number that goes from 100 down to 0. I don't know if you've noticed it. And I've tried to use that number to try to time like a perfect. Even that is inconsistent. Because a lot of times when I hold the right, say I'm Kaim, right, and I'm going straight at him, if I hold RT, if I let it go right around like 35, 37, I get a perfect most of the time. And I think the number is meant to kind of off-put that, like, timing the ring thing. Like, you're supposed to try to time it to the number, I think. But even then, it's not the most consistent thing. Because I would say, like, I'll get a 35 and it's perfect. And then the next round, I'll do another 35 and it's a good. And I'm like, but it's the same fucking number. So I think the number has tried to negate that. But even then, it feels as inconsistent as the ring system in general.
If that's truly the case, then they did not explain it very well at all. Because I don't even think they explained that timer at the top.
If they do, I don't remember. Because the tutorials that you get in the game, I think, are very Final Fantasy X inspired, where they're very clear and to the point when they first introduce them to you, and you can always refer to them if you need them. But even then, it's like in this, the game's systems, if you're used to RPGs, are very similar to each other. You know what I mean? They don't stick out that much.
Yeah. There is one more mechanic that I wanted to touch on, and it's super quick. It's just the immortals and the mortals, because you're going to have both in your party, they function a little differently. So the mortals function pretty standard. As they level up, they learn new skills. Great. The immortals have this special ability called Skill Link, wherein you can choose one of your mortal companion's skills, and over each battle, you are going to learn them. And the cool thing is you can just learn any skill pretty much that your mortal counterparts have, essentially making your immortals the real tanks of your battle party. And once you learn these, you can move on to another one, and you permanently know that skill. Now, you do have to choose which skills you assign. You don't have unlimited slots. I think you start out with 3, and then you can increase your number of slots by getting an item called a seed slot, or a slot seed, or something like that. And like right now, I think my characters are up to 8. Like everybody's around 7 or 8, and it's fine. It's really fun. It's cool because you can learn casting support. You can learn steel and other auxiliary abilities. You can learn resistances to every status effect in the game, which, by the way, there are a lot of, more than most Final Fantasies.
Oh, God.
It's really cool. It's really cool, and I think this is a really unique take, and it makes it gives a diegetic reason for the immortality being what it is into the battles. So A+ from me, thumbs up. I think it's super great.
Yeah, and it's interesting from a story perspective. It works because like Kaim and Seth have lost their memories. So any skills that they say would have learned in their 1,000 years of battles, they've just kind of forgotten and need to rely on their mortal friends to kind of, get back up there. And yeah, this system, the skill link system, is essentially like, your junctioning system or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's done so much better here. It is very streamlined. As you said, you go in, say like, oh, I want Seth to learn level 2 white magic. You just put that in. After a certain number of battles or whatever, it'll tell you she's learned it, and then you're good to go. You can, but once you finish setting the skill link, then you have to, when it's done, you have to put it in your set so you have it. But yeah, it's very simple, easy to use, and it's a good way of constantly feeling progress as you play through the game outside of just grinding for levels, even though you don't even really need to grind in this game. At least as far as I have been in the game, I've never had to grind. Like, I had to grind one time, but it helps in that way. And as we mentioned with the random encounters, there are them, but the encounter rate isn't that bad. I've played some that are dreadful, and this one is actually fairly light.
Yeah. If you've played Persona 2, it is the complete opposite of that. Like these really aren't that bad. And thankfully, this isn't like, I think it's Pokemon. Yeah, it's Pokemon. This isn't like that where if you use your sprint button and move hilariously fast, you're not going to run into more battles. It's not like that.
Yeah.
Thank the Lord above. Thank Gooch. That is a high-level overview of the gameplay and the mechanics. It really doesn't get much different than that. There are no summons, by the way, at least not as far as I've got. And it's just a really solid battle system. It's nothing that's going to make it's not going to make the game for you, I don't think, but it is very serviceable. And that just leaves one more topic to talk about before we move into the story, and that is the music. Let's talk about the score by none other than Nobuo Uematsu. I wanted to lead off with this quote that I found from him that he said. He says, quote, "When I was composing the main theme, I often imagined what it would be like to live for 1,000 years. It must be so intolerable and painful seeing your families, lovers, and friends dying while you remain living. This feeling drove me to write the theme in a minor key." That's such a little glib remark. I mean, he's like unloading this heavy stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, so that's why I put it in minor."
That's why I made it sad.
You know what? And I'm gonna play these back to back right after I say this. But this theme to me feels like a more mature, developed, and pensive version of Terra's theme from Final Fantasy VI. Terra's theme / the world map theme, they're kind of the same. Let's hear the themes back to back. Yeah, I don't know. To me, that's immediately what this sounded like. See our episode on the music of Nobuo Uematsu. It's a more recent one to this one. I talked with Jameson from Bar Silence about this, and that's exactly where we landed on this too. Just food for thought. This is one of my favorite Uematsu soundtracks. It is up there for me with FF8, FF9, and Grand Blue Fantasy. I love this. I love this so much.
It is a phenomenal soundtrack. It feels like Uematsu is getting to just do whatever he wants, you know, because he had such a good working relationship with Sakaguchi at that point. And I think Uematsu, when did he go freelance? Because he still does stuff with Square, but he's a freelancer, you know, and he still gets work to this day.
I thought he always was free. No, that's right. He did. He left Square whenever he said it started to become like he was doing more meetings than composing.
Yeah,
which is that's a man after my heart, man. I mean, I feel that.
Yeah, it was probably like the PS1 era, I think, is when he decided to fuck off. But he would always come back because they liked him so much. And yeah, Lost Odyssey, like, I love the main theme of this game. It is absolutely gorgeous. The battle theme is great. The opening town theme, like the first town that you're in, I forget the name of it off the top of my head, but that sort of kind of like weird music that's in the background is done really well, and he puts his stamp on it, really. It's big, it's symphonic, it really emphasizes the emotions that they're trying to convey with the story, and nothing feels out of place, nothing feels too, weird or off-putting. It is just very, very well done. It's not like if I had to pick a favorite Uematsu like piece, I'm gonna sound very lame when I say this, but it's the prelude, the Final Fantasy prelude. But the Lost Odyssey theme is probably like number 2. It's such a great piece of music, Like he just at this point he was a master of his craft. He knew how to conduct the orchestra, and he is just fucking nailing it. You
had mentioned his stamps are on this, and I agree wholeheartedly. Every stylistic and aesthetic stamp, for a lack of a better term, that signifies an Uematsu work is here. There is genre flexibility. There is use of motifs, although less in this game than in previous titles. Prog rock is a huge influence here. Lots of prog rock trappings over an orchestral setting. Not just an orchestral setting, like a lot of composers will use an orchestral settings, and I'm using scare quotes here, and it's just string patches, like string section, and big horn hits, right? And that's okay, but here, like, there are bassoon solos in here, there are clarinet solos, there are oboe solos. You get the full breadth of the orchestra here, and it's beautiful. And as a woodwind player, I appreciate that. He also uses a lot of cultural instruments here. In the Lost Odyssey episode, that's where we're at now. In the Uematsu music episode, I referred to it as a shakuhachi, and that's not correct. What it actually is, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, it's a kina, Quena. It's an Andean flute, a flute of the people of the Andes, and it has this very morose kind of sound. It is similar to the shakuhachi in that it has an inherent sadness to it, but shakuhachi is lower in timbre. This is higher. This is like in upper flute register, upper flute, low piccolo register, and it also has the trademark of the shakuhachi, which is effortless glissando, and you could transition between notes as if there were no barriers, so no frets, no fingerings. It's just a straight pitch slide. And you hear this instrument in particular on the world map theme, and true to Uematsu's form, it's the main theme played on the kina, and out of nowhere a distorted electric guitar comes in, and it's fucking metal. It's so good.
Yeah,
I love it so much.
I love that there are some boss themes that are just like straight up just like death metal almost.
Dude, the final boss theme, I haven't got to it yet, but I've listened to it. It's incredible.
Yeah, it reminds me of Final Fantasy X, where that final boss is just like.
Is that the butt rock one?
it's just like growly vocals and everything, like right the fuck out of nowhere. Like the whole game has been like just like normal stuff, and then they just throw you for a loop, which shows that he's keeping up with the times a little bit, you know. But yeah, this is definitely one of his better soundtracks, I think. And I think you guys have mentioned the Uematsu video that like whenever he gets asked about Lost Odyssey, he just gets so happy and excited to talk about it because he's still very proud of it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And because everybody's probably pestering him about Final Fantasy, and like rightfully so, don't get me wrong. Like he made 4 through 10 just banger after banger. He thought 6 was going to be the last one. And see part 4 of our Final Fantasy 6 miniseries, because like that final encounter with Kefka is just phenomenally scored. But he did that, and then he put out 7, and then he did 8. Like those are 3 of his most highly regarded OSTs. The man just doesn't know how to take it easy.
Yeah. I mean, even with 6, not just the final encounter, but the initial scene of like the 3 robots going through the snow, and then that music behind it, just impeccable.
Yeah, you know what bums me out about the Pixel remaster is that they removed the credits crawling across.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's a bummer.
Yeah. Square mismanaging the Final Fantasy series? They would never.
Who would have thought?
Just don't ask them about Dragon Quest.
So we've got through the visuals, we've got through the music, the gameplay, the dev history, and our personal opinions, as well as our community's opinions. And it's time to move into the story. Just to reiterate, we are not going to spoil anything before we get there. What we have talked about so far, I do not consider spoilers personally because it is on the back of the box. Today, it is highly likely that we will not get to the end of Disc 1, but we will get as far as we can today. Again, we won't spoil anything before we get there, so tune out if you don't want to be spoiled. It will be obvious. So before we get there, Thrak, do you have any parting thoughts? Do you have anything else you want to say before we jump into this story?
If you've made it this far and you don't like weeb shit, get out. But
what?
Well, this game's not that weeby, to be fair. It's not that bad.
No, not at all.
I'm just being weird. Yeah, I think it's a great game, and if any of this has interested you, it is well worth a play. If you have an Xbox, I think you owe it to yourself to play this game. It is a must for every Xbox owner, even you casual Madden and Call of Duty fucks who obviously listen to the show every week. You need to play this game. I would love to see Microsoft and Miss Walker work together more in the future, because I know Phil Spencer gets bugged about it still to this day. Are you ever going to work with him again? And he's like, maybe. I think if this game got more attention and more praise, maybe it would initiate something. I don't know, but it is definitely worth a play. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, well said, and full-heartedly agree. I have nothing against the Call of Duty and the Madden folks, but hey, that's fine. I'm not going to tell you not to say it.
Play better games.
Yeah, I haven't played in Madden in a long time.
They used to be good, but that's another topic for another day.
So for now, let's dive into the story. Oh, geez, I didn't even think of a clever way to get into this. Fuck it. Let's dive in. Let's talk about the heart-wrenching, soul-searching, and ultimately the story of Lost Odyssey. We start off with a war. That's the first thing we see, like a Lord of the Rings-sized war. There's an army clad in heavy black armor and an army in somewhat less heavy gold armor. Golds are getting demolished. There are some rudimentary machines here too. Not super rudimentary, but clearly a new technology. Then, the fallen gold soldiers get revived. Several towers that are manned by, some other soldiers, sages maybe, shoot out these blue beams reviving the fallen gold soldiers. And at this point, a clear main character stands out. You can tell he's the main character because of the way he's dressed. That is our Kaim Argonar. He's not wearing any armor. His midriff is showing. He's a sexy boy. He's a sexy guy.
He's wearing plot armor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, actually, literally, too, because, immortal.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's noticeably more skilled than everybody on the battlefield. This is us, and this is where we get our first battle. This first battle, it's just kind of a wave of soldiers. You literally cannot lose. If you get destroyed by the soldiers or the machines, you immediately get revived. You physically cannot lose this. After the army and the giant machine that comes in to fight us, after we take care of them, the army surrounds us. As soon as they do, the clouds part. Somehow, lava and magma begin falling from the heavens. It is literally biblical levels of destruction. Soldiers run in vain. Our main character watches, seemingly unperturbed. An explosion. And the aftermath shows no life, human or otherwise, no vegetation either, except our main character. He walks among the ash, forever moving forward. Aside from that tutorial battle taking a little too long, what a fucking opening, man.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible.
It is. It is a very, very good opening. It establishes war going on and everything, and it establishes that your main character is very powerful, and seemingly, while seemingly fighting on the side of the golds, he doesn't really fit in with them, as we find out later. And through, the meteor strike that he just kind of walks away from, you're just like, what the hell? And the thing is, like, immediately after that, is I'm sure you'll say, when you talk to the soldiers, they're like, how the hell did you survive that? Like, we were lucky to survive that, and we weren't even in the blast. We were, like, in the outskirts, and most of us died. And you find Kaim was in, like, the blast zone. Nothing.
It's really spectacular. I mean, this is some of the best spectacle we see through most of the game, and it's really effective.
It's some of the best spectacle of the 360 era, I think. As far as opening cutscenes go and the way it hooks you in, it is brilliant.
Well said, and completely agree. We take control of him shortly hereafter. We're in the Highlands of Wool. That is what this place is known as. This is where we're getting the tutorial. We're interacting with the environment. Sometimes you're going to have to ram objects to get through, picking up loot, running into random battles, things like that. Eventually, we do meet those guards that you mentioned, Thrak, and they're like, how did you survive? And Kaim's like, I don't know.
He's not even really talking that much here. He's he's doing the silent, brooding protagonist, which at first you're thinking, oh, that again. But the more you play the game, the more you realize the conventions that they're using, especially at the start of the game, are meant to drive the plot forward later on. They're not just there because they need to be there.
I was really not liking Kaim throughout the entire first disc until the very end, specifically because of how bland he is. Half of his dialogue is just, I don't know, or I don't care.
Yeah.
But in retrospect, it makes sense as to why. And if I remembered, I'll pull out this pin and, we could talk about why that makes sense.
Yeah. He reminds me a little bit of a Squall from 8. But
a little bit,
but
yeah.
He's better than Squall. But I don't like Squall at all.
He's different. I like Squall. I do.
That's fine. I've never been a fan.
Those guards that we mentioned, they put us into a cart to take us out of the blast zone. We can't be here. On the car, we see somebody named Seth Balmore. We learn her name right away. She's a younger woman who seems shocked to see us, but we don't know why. You can tell she's going to be important because she is dressed differently as well. It's like an anime thing, man. Like, anytime you see someone like that, it's like, wonder who the main character is.
She's also wearing plot armor.
Yeah, yeah. In both senses of the phrase. We don't know that yet, though. Shit. I fucked up.
Spoilers.
She does try speaking to us, but she never finishes her thought. It's only a spoiler for the next, 10 minutes of the game.
Yeah.
This is also where we start to constantly hear hints or outright depictions of our immortality. Walking miracle. How did you survive that? And etc. This is also where the camera gets very 2000s. I just made a note of that. because it still bothers me, but that's just me. We're taken to the the Magic Republic of Ura.
Magic and magical.
Yeah, you could call it magical. That makes me think more of like Sailor Moon. I don't know.
No Sailor Moon here.
Yeah, I like Sailor Moon. We arrive and we're told that the council wants to hear from us, wants to hear from a survivor, specifically us, and not Seth. Kind of odd. And this begins our guided journey to the council's chambers. We get onto a monorail, we get to walk through some bits of the opening city, and this is where the opening credits play, as we get to see a montage of the city. Like Thrak mentioned before, like we were talking about, it's very kind of steampunk adjacent, not quite, but sort of in the realms of 6 and 7, Final Fantasy, that is. Art Deco meets high fantasy. How we described it, you heard us.
Yeah.
We're not going to repeat ourselves.
Yeah, magic Japanese steampunk.
Yeah.
There you go.
I could see that. It's gold, a lot of gold here.
Yeah, and it's weird the whole like, yeah, they don't want to talk to Seth, but like, was Seth part of that battle? I don't know if they mentioned that, I must have forgot it.
She was leading the magic battalion, but they do say that she also survived the blast. So I think yes.
Okay, I must have forgot that then.
We get a quick little introduction here in the form of a voiceover, and it says this. 30 years ago, a new power manifested itself onto the world. With its discovery came the Magic Industrial Revolution. This power came to be called magic energy. Even now, there are none who can explain why this power suddenly flourished as it did. Today, this magic energy permeates every corner of the world. It has changed the way people live, transformed the shape of industry, and has even altered the nature of war. And that last part, end quote, that last part will become very important because we are about to get political. We get into the Ura Council. Here's the gist of this. And Thrak, if this is incorrect or lacking in information, please feel free to fill in.
It's all right. I think it's done better than, say, the Star Wars prequels politics stuff.
Well, that's a low bar.
But I think I think it's influenced by it. I mean, hell, people say FF12 is just a Star Wars prequel, so I think that influence still sits there. I have heard that.
Yeah. The gist is this: the nation of Kent is requesting a truce. Gotsa, another nation, is suspected to be pulling the strings. This is where we first hear of Grand Staff, and that it may have caused the meteor crash at Wool due to magic energy leaking out of it. The fire from the heavens, that was due to a meteor. Does not look like a meteor, but that is the canonical explanation. It and its construction... Oh, I used the wrong "it's" in here. That's embarrassing. It and its construction are looked after by Gongora, a character we'll be seeing a lot of who, to me, looks like he is straight out of a Tim and Eric sketch. Or like Sam Hyde dressed up as like a fucked up guy.
What's your dad like? I want to meet that dad.
I once you told me that, I can't unsee it.
He looks so weird, dude.
He does.
Like listeners, just look up, type Lost Odyssey Gongora. Do not look at anything, but just click on images. There are like character models of him. He just looks so strange.
Yeah, he's a wacky dude.
The council wants to stop Grand Staff construction as they investigate the meteor cause, and Gongora does not like this at all. Does that about sum up this situation?
Yeah, and for people who don't know what Grand Staff is, basically at this point, this world is found a way to take magic and convert it into a resource, like say oil or natural gas or whatever, right? Which is the Magic Industrial Revolution. And so with this Grand Staff, it essentially is they like will drill into the ground for oil. Like this is essentially that, but for magic. But, you know, trying to harvest that kind of magic is, causing these weird things to happen because it's still very uncontrollable. But Gongora, who has been, promoting the construction, wants to keep it going, obviously, and for other reasons. So, he's trying to push to keep this going. And you will, I assume you'll say later that Aura is politically in an interesting spot right now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And another thing which we're about to find out about Gongora is that he is a sorcerer himself. So he's
Yes.
invested in this personally.
Is he part of the political structure, or is it just he just happens to have a lot of power due to his influence?
I think a little of column A, a little of B. Or at the
Okay.
very least, he is part of it because of his power and influence.
Okay.
I think. This is all before Kaim shows up, and he finally does here. When Kaim shows up, the leader of this council, Roxian, asks Kaim, "How did you survive?" Kaim says,
I don't know.
to which I wrote, LOL, because we're going to be hearing a lot of this. Gongora butts in to explain that Kaim is under a spell of immortality that Gongora himself created. Roxian says, and this is a direct quote, and I'm inflecting the same way, "I wish to know more. How does it work?" To which Kaim says,
I don't know.
dude, it's so funny.
Yeah, that Harvard translator didn't translate the main game dialogue.
Yeah, he didn't. I wonder what, Japanese is interesting because there are particles that you can add onto the end of basic phrases. I don't know could be something like wakarimasen. And if you would say wakarimasen na, like that's kind of wondering to yourself, like, I don't know. Whereas if you were to say wakarimasen yo, that's like you saying, hey, you don't know this, so let me tell you, I don't know. It's interesting. That's about as advanced as my Japanese is going to get on this podcast. But I would be interested in seeing that original translation. It's the same in 8 with Squall, like the translation of his catchphrase ... whatever. It is not like it's not as emo in the Japanese text.
God damn it.
Thank you for that, Final Fantasy VIII Divergence. Kaim does not have his memories at the moment. We learn this now. Gongora has been, quote, studying us. We're not sure what any of this means just yet, but he also says, and this is so suspicious, he says that, quote, hearing about the spell or hearing the spell can bring death near. So he wants to keep everything secret and just don't worry, he'll take care of it. He doesn't sound malicious, but like when you just look at the words he's saying, it is so suspicious.
Oh, yeah. Like, at first, he doesn't come off as a villain. You know, at first, you just think, oh, he's maybe like the character that's going to tell you what to do. You know, the character that's go on this mission, go do this thing, right? But the deeper you get into your first time in Aura, the more you hear about him and the more you see him interact with these other sort of important characters, it does raise the Among Us flags. You know, something's up with this guy, but, we're not quite sure what yet, but he is a sussy little baka.
Since you are immortal, and since they know this is going to be extremely dangerous, they want to use you. They're like, go investigate Grand Staff. We want to see what the hell is going on over there, why this caused such destruction. And by the way, you're going to be joined by another immortal named Seth. Well, actually, you tell them about Seth. You say, yeah, I met another immortal. Her name is Seth Balmore. And they say, all right, she's going with you. And this is where we get some time to explore the city. We kind of already talked about it, but it's a nice place. This is a nice starting city. And there is a lot of loot in this game. Pretty much every vase or pot you find, you can probe it.
Yeah.
Probe it all day.
They specifically use the word probe. And I'm so glad they don't have Kaim just like shove his hand into the vase and pull stuff out. Thank God. But also around this time, when you find Seth, is when you can get your first encounter of the 1,000-Year Dreams.
Yes. I don't remember if I put that in the notes, but you do. The way that you find these 1,000-Year Dreams, some of them are mandatory, many of them are not. It's I'm gonna be a super douchebag right now and quote a tweet that I made the other day. It's kind of like, the way that it works in this game, you'll be walking and you'll just approach somebody and the screen will fade as if it's going into a cutscene. And the person will say something totally asinine like, "Hello, fellow travelers, have you tried my jam? Oh, I do apologize. I met a Jam Supreme Master several years ago, and ever since, I simply can't stop thinking about jam." And then you'll get like this dramatic visual filter and music, and it will say, "Kaim has recalled a memory locked deep within his heart." And then you'll read like a 15-minute story about jam that is way better written than anything else in the game.
A dream has been revealed.
Yeah, that's the Lost Odyssey way.
But if you think about it in like practicality sense, like when this happens, is Kaim just like sitting there drifting off into space, like reading this dream, and the other guy's just like, why is he not responding to what I'm saying? Like he's just staring off into the sunset, you know?
I'm not sure, because you get the option to not dream, and you can just move on with your day.
Yeah. And what I like is later on when like you go to the inn and you go to the inn and sleep and get your health back, right? It'll say like, "Oh, do you want to relive any of these dreams?" And that makes more sense to do when you're sleeping. It's just like when it happens in the moment, always it's like when I'm in the middle of playing the game and it'll just kind of like randomly happen sometimes. I'm just like, no, I'm doing a thing. I'll get to it later kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you sit there and try to do the story while you're in the middle of the game, it just grinds the pacing to a halt, Yeah.
I have fallen into the rhythm of like, I will occasionally read one as I find it, but I mostly read them before and after I'm done with a session, like before I start it, and after I finish it.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good time to do it.
So we cut back to the council. Roxian votes to remove Gongora completely from the council, puts Grand Staff into the council's hands, and puts Gongora under couch arrest. Yep, that's what I said. House arrest. He seems to... Yeah, that's probably what he's doing. Back at the inn, this is where we get our first dream. It is Kaim, it's the POV of Kaim, running towards a girl on a cliff. The girl jumps, girl meaning a child, and Kaim seems to be devastated. There's another woman here, weeping, sobbing. This causes Kaim to startle awake, and this is where we get our first dream entry. Like we mentioned before, we're going to talk about the dreams more in the next episode after we have both read all of them. Or at least I'm going to read all of them. You don't have to if you don't want to, Thrak.
No, I am. I'm reading.
The listeners
all of
will hold you to this, man.
No, because
they're brutal.
Hey, they're good. So I want to read them all.
The listeners are brutal, not the dreams. The dreams are delightful.
No, the dreams are brutal. They are. I've read some of them, and I'm just like, what the fuck, man? God.
As Kaim walks through the city, we see some dude who sort of looks like Isaru from Final Fantasy X. He's trailing us. So Kaim is the kind of person that is waiting for people to fuck around so they can find out, and he immediately chokeslams the dude into a wall. Terrific. The dude introduces himself. He's Jansen. He's Gongora's messenger. He has come to tell you that Gongora wants to see you at his mansion since he's under house arrest. Okay, Thrak, you and I have talked about Jansen at length off mic. Let's talk about him here. How are we feeling about Jansen?
God damn, you are right. He looks like a Saru from 10. I never put it together.
He's got prettier eyes, or more defined eyes.
He's got more PS2 eyes, not 360 eyes. I think he'll be a more interesting character to talk about the further in we get. Yeah, he is kind of like your comedy character, right? And that's sort of how they play him for most of the game, even in parts when he really shouldn't be doing it. But there are points near, say, like mid-late, like disc 3 going into disc 4, where his character does change a little bit, and actually he grows a little bit. Actually, he has character development. You wouldn't think he would, but he does. So he starts here as kind of like the bumbling idiot. The further along you get, they actually do something with his character that I really appreciate.
I wouldn't call him a bumbling idiot. He's pretty quick-witted, and he's a fast talker.
Yeah,
he will talk. Given any situation, he will talk. Whether it is to talk his way out of something, to talk to process things, he is constantly speaking and speaking quickly. And I had this thought, and I want to run it by you. Something that I detest, and I've said this many times before, is Marvel dialogue and just in general Whedon dialogue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sea of Stars largely got on my nerves because of this. It's something that I don't like. Do you think that Jansen is written like a Whedon character? I thought at first maybe.
A little bit.
The thing is about Jansen is like, you know, when enemies storm, like if they ambush you, Jansen's not going to turn and say, guys, we've got company, you know, or he's not going to be like, yeah, so that just happened. Like, he doesn't do that.
He's not a Nathan Drake, is what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played any of those games, to be honest.
I won't go too deep. I won't go too deep into them then.
Oh, thank you so much. but like he speaks notably different. He speaks honestly kind of like a regular dude thrown into a JRPG.
Yes.
And sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's cringy. Like
oh yeah.
There's a moment that we're gonna get to pretty soon where like Jansen's complaining about being tired and somebody's like,
"There's no road."
Pull yourself together. If this is all it takes to wear you out, we're in trouble.
Yeah, well, I don't wear out in bed.
And it's like, why would you say that?
I remember that.
What a weird thing to say in a JRPG setting. I don't know.
Yeah, like my biggest issue with Jansen is that it's like every moment he has something to say. And it's like he doesn't know when to not talk. And that's the issue. And that might be the Whedon thing you're talking about, because it feels like they have to have a witty remark every time with him. And it's like he doesn't always need to say shit. He's not the worst. I've definitely played some other JRPGs that have comedy characters that are done far worse than him. And with him, it is leading somewhere.
Just because we talked about 10-2 a little bit, or 10 with Isaru, 10-2, thinking of Brother. That's a comedy character that I think is terrible, and I wish he wasn't even in the game. Jansen is not that bad.
Yeah, or you might not like I say this, Azel from Final Fantasy VIII. I can't stand him.
He just wants his hot dogs, man.
If you met him in real life, you would just stay away from him as far as possible. Like,
oh, 100%.
Like those like kind of high energy people, like always up, always like hyper and positive. I don't trust them. It's like, guys, I'm usually kind of like low mid energy, so I'm like, calm it down, okay? We got shit to do.
We meet Tolton here. Tolton is part of the royal bloodline of the monarchy that is no longer in power. He's speaking with Gongora prior to our arrival. Like I said, he's a citizen now that the monarchy's been dissolved, and Gongora is basically kissing his shoes. He believes that the council wants to get rid of magic energy from the world despite everybody benefiting from it. As Tolton is leaving, after they're done talking, he takes very clear notice of Kaim, but we don't know if this is significant yet. When Kaim does finally enter? Why did I say it like that? Enter. When Kaim finally enters, he bends to kiss Gongora's hand and promptly threatens Jansen with a sword, who is hiding behind a pillar. Kaim is trying to murder Jansen at every chance he gets.
I mean, if there's a guy kind of stalking you, I don't see why Kaim would not threaten him. But what's interesting with Tolton is, the whole monarchy has been dissolved. It was done voluntarily.
I don't think we know that yet.
Oh, we don't?
I don't think so.
I thought they said that pretty early on.
Maybe they did. Tolton's dad died, and and Tolton stepped down, right?
Yeah, basically, because it's like he would have inherited it, and he didn't want to. And I think also Aura just didn't want the monarchy. They wanted a democracy. And Tolton's like, okay. He's like, I can still live in like my fancy mansion, right? They're like, yeah. He's like, okay.
Consolation prize.
Yeah, he's like, I don't have to do anything. Sounds good to me.
Gongora quells the tempers of everybody there, and he says that Jansen's going to come with Kaim and Seth because he believes Seth to be dangerous. He says that he doesn't know much about her, but he does say that in her past life she was a pirate, and he doesn't trust her. And then he says this.
Remember, Kaim, you're the only one I can trust.
This is the last thing he says to us as we go to leave. It is so clear that he is up to something.
He is the Palpatine to Kaim's Anakin.
Yeah. He's a manipulative son of a gun.
Oh, yeah.
Outside, we run into Seth. Kaim does. She's been looking for us. After the most cliche anime jump and look up at the camera ever, she starts wondering if we've met somewhere before. Were we comrades? Were we friends? Were we lovers? Kaim does not give a shit. He can't believe this shit, and he wants nothing to do with this shit. He brushes her off so easily.
We're all comrades.
Truly. The following morning, it shows, we kind of cut after they speak. The following morning, we are waiting for Jansen. Seth hasn't met Jansen yet, which is important because the first impression she gets, and this is truly where I thought I was going to hate Jansen for the whole game, he stumbles out of a brothel, basically, with 3 buxom wenches in tow, 3 busty women. He is hammered.
This is the other guy?
Yeah.
Whoa, baby. What a woman. I can't believe my luck.
Reeks of booze.
Why are you late?
Can't you tell? A man's got to do certain things before leaving on a mission like this. And I knew what I had to do.
And they're just eating it up because he's buying them drinks. He's paying them money. It's not dissimilar to a what do you call it? Like in Japan, a cabaret club. You pay money to buy women booze, so they sit with you and you have a good time.
Oh, a hostess club.
Yes. What did I said cabaret club. Yeah, hostess club.
But I think in this case, Jansen did have sex with them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%
Whereas a hostess club, it never gets physical.
Yeah, that's a no-no. You don't do that. You get thrown out for doing that shit.
Yeah, you pay a woman to pretend to be friends with you for an hour.
I need it. Anyway, this is such a comical tonal shift. And that's something important too. Like, I know we're getting a little long-winded. This is going to be a long series. I apologize. The tonal shifts in this game, they come out of nowhere and they hit really hard. And honestly, I think it's a detriment to this game. We're going to meet a villain probably in the next episode who is, he's just a general, but he's like a Looney Tunes villain. It's so bizarre. The tonal shifts in this game are really weird.
Yeah, especially when it tries to do these comedy bits. It's especially doing it this early. It's like I see what they're trying to do. Like, again, they're trying to establish the characters. He didn't have to do that with Jansen. You know what I mean? But I think as the game goes along, the tonal shifts aren't as bad.
Yeah, I think you're right. Seth can't believe this shit. And shout out to Retrograde Amnesia. I've been binging that amazing podcast for a long time now, and I can't stop saying that catchphrase because of them. She can't believe this shit. She is already tired of Jansen. She tells the girls to fuck off, and she also tips them too, which is nice. And we're off to the Ypsilon Mountains. Jansen, this is where Jansen's constantly complaining about being tired, and he says, well, I don't tire out in bed. And my only note on that is Jesus Christ. This is interesting here. Jansen starts accusing Seth of lying. He's like, well, you remember to shave your legs every day and pluck your eyebrows. You seem to know where you're going, and you owe me money. So are you really lacking your memories? And she kind of explains, like, yes, I am, but like my body remembers. I've been alive so long that my body remembers this path. And Kaim says the same thing. Like he says, I feel that too. But Jansen's like, or somebody, one of them is like, well, don't you want to remember? And Kaim says this: if I remember and my past didn't amount to much, I think it's better to never remember. Do you want to chew on that a little bit? Like,
Yeah, we can.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, I think before that, the whole concept of amnesia is such an interesting topic, especially in, say, like the world of psychology, where it's like, is it even a real thing? It's hard to debunk if someone says if they're an amnesiac and can't remember anything. But it's like, how can you not remember anything like memories, but still remember to do, specific like societal expectations of you that were taught to you when you were younger, kind of thing. It's a weird little dilemma. But yeah, with his, if I remember my past didn't amount to much, it's better. It's like I feel you're probably on the it's better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. Whereas I think Kaim is flipping that a little bit. And I think why he's saying that is probably if you are an immortal and, the more you live, it just becomes more like mundane. It doesn't feel as special the longer you go on. So maybe it's just Kaim is just sick of this shit. Because as we'll find out, as well as through the 1,000-Year Dreams, he tries so hard to have a fulfilling life in so many different avenues, and he can't get past the immortality, Like, I don't get the sense he necessarily wants to die, but I get the sense that he's just almost just kind of done, that he's seen everything and there's nothing really left for him to do, but he can't die. So he's just doing what he can, or just doing the thing that he thinks needs to be done, essentially. But yeah, it's interesting to see him in this very sort of depleted, depressed state, which just could be because he's not remembering anything. And maybe his brain is saying, well, if I'm not remember anything, it didn't matter. But as we get further and further and explore more of Kaim's character and learn more about his past, he starts caring more. So maybe it's just he needed that connection brought back for him to remember what it was that he was doing in the first place, or why, despite being an immortal, it's still worth doing, if that makes any sense.
This is a blessing and a curse to have you and I on the same show, because you and I are cut of the same cloth where we are loquacious individuals. You know what that means?
Well, it was just like wax philosophical.
Speak at length.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All that to say, and I say that poking fun because I am the same way. But I agree, to put it in a more succinct way, Kaim's situation has dictated his view on life, which is a completely understandable thing.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, he's immortal, right? Like, of course, his view is going to be completely changed. Even if he can't remember it, it's living deep in his bones. So, of course, he is going to say, like, you know, if my past didn't amount to anything, I don't give a shit. And also, he's dealing with these night terrors that he doesn't understand.
Exactly. He is a complicated character. Like, he's not just a brooding protagonist because he's like some emo who can't get laid. Like, there's more to him than that, you know, clearly from the outset, you know. But I think they do a good job at showing, like, there's a mystery, like, this character is a mystery to even himself. And you have to get more into the game to solve that mystery and figure out why Kaim is the way that he is. And he's a lost soul that needs to be found.
He's some might say that he's the Odyssey that was lost all along.
Ooh, I like that.
Don't encourage that. Don't. We get a brief scene here. By the way, this is like an interstitial, a flashback of Gongora giving Jansen this mysterious ball, and all he says is, "If Kaim or Seth begin to regain their memories, use this." Does not get elaborated on until a bit later. It's just showing us that Gongora is scheming. He's scheming. We get another interstitial here, though, with Tolton. His servants are bringing him some soup. There's like this weird tension in the room. And before he can eat it, Gongora just bursts in. Looks like he's going to beat the shit out of Tolton. But what he does is he grabs the soup and whips it at the ground. Everybody's like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? And Gongora just like holds his hand up. He's like, just watch. And he lets out this little rodent who laps up the soup and almost immediately convulses, dies, and some kind of a plant bursts out of his stomach. We can see in the background one of the attendants who must have eaten the soup, or maybe not, given something that's about to happen. She passes out or goes limp and is carried out. Somebody's trying to assassinate Tolton. Gongora says it's because there are powers at play that do not want any chance of the monarchy being restored. Who those powers are, we'll come to find out. But that's why he tells Tolton that just happened. Tolton doesn't want this shit, and Gongora can't believe Tolton doesn't understand this shit. So Gongora says, "Hey, I'm gonna look out for you. You can trust me 100%, buddy." He lays it on so thick here, and what's the reason that I said I don't know if the guard died is because as Gongora leaves, you can see him paying off one of Tolton's guards, and he says,
Well done. We'll have to push him harder. I'll be in touch when the time comes.
And it's interesting that he's trying to say to Tolton that, like, we can't let, the reemergence of the monarchy, stop. We need to bring, like, Gongora's, he establishes it here that he's like, oh, we need to bring the monarchy back. We need to get rid of the council. We can't trust the council, blah, 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 right? And Tolton is just like, but why? Like, I voluntarily stepped down. Like, I don't want to do this. The council seems to be fine. Everybody's happier with them. Why should I come back? And Gongora is being very gaslighting. He is trying to...
I was just about to say that,
he's gaslighting Tolton into being the king, and because Tolton doesn't really have his own sort of sense of self, he's just kind of going along with it, because he recognizes that Gongora is a smarter person than him, and he's like, maybe I should trust him, because Tolton doesn't really have any sort of, like, self-confidence to really stand up for himself.
Yeah, it's, we're not explicitly shown Gongor's evilness yet, but like you can tell just by the way he's speaking and what he's saying. I mean, he's paying off guards, he's manipulating Jansen, you know.
Yeah.
Plus he looks like a fucked up guy.
And I gotta say, like, if I had to pick a least favorite character, it probably is Tolton, because he's just kind of a nothing. You know what I mean? There's not a lot to his character. He feels like a plot device more than a character.
I was literally thinking the same phrase.
And I know I'm further along than you, and a couple things happen, but it hasn't really changed my opinion on him. Not really. Maybe when I finish the game, or when we finish the game, there will be, maybe it'll make sense. I'm hoping. But because this game is definitely doing long form storytelling. So I'm hoping they do something with him, but for right now, I just don't like him.
So far, I'm with you. So far. After walking through the mountains some more, we get to Grand Staff. Kaim notes that he's seen this before, but we get ambushed by a bunch of monsters before we can really do much. Shortly after, we get ambushed by like a small Roman army with this general that looks like somebody said, "We've got Heihachi at home." Heihachi Mishima.
Yeah. He has the same. He's got the same haircut.
I don't think it's hair. It's like his headpiece, but it like looks identical because I think he's bald.
Yeah, like hopefully the viewers know who Heihachi is from Tekken. But yeah, it's like if you don't know, imagine just bald and then essentially like two bird wing style hair just out. And he has that, but he has the little like frilly stash as well.
The pencil stash.
Yeah, but it's like curly. It's zesty.
Yeah, it's a zesty little stash. It's a gross little stash.
It looks painted on.
We get a short battle here, and afterwards, Kaim and Seth tell Jansen they see the magic leaking out of this pipe. Because remember, we're at Grand Staff. And they say, "Hey, Jansen, shoot the pipe." And he he starts freaking out. He's like, "I can't do that. That's a horrible idea." And they say, "Jansen, you're going to shoot it." And he says, "Okay." So he does. And this causes enough commotion to get everybody off of our backs, but some weird purple stuff opens up in the sky, and lightning strikes Grand Staff. Kaim seems drawn to it, but this is where the scenario kind of explodes and we black out. So, this is actually where we are going to stop for today. Our characters get captured. We're going to wake up in a cell, in several cells, actually, and that's where we're going to pick up next time. So, for next time, and take this with a grain of salt, this is kind of my first time trying to plan out a game that I've never played and, do hard stop sections. Next time, if you want to be safe, get into Disc 3. If you want to be safe, get into Disc 3. But for now, we're stopping here. So, since we have stopped, this is going extremely well. I want to talk about Thrak's show, that is centered around a little-known console called the 3DO. So, Thrak, if you wouldn't mind, you could talk about the 3DO as a system if you want, but tell us a little bit about the show that you're doing with friend of the show, Bill Barber. And if you wouldn't mind also, give an episode that would be good for first-timers to listen to.
Okay, well, thank you. So the 3DO show, at the time of this recording, is currently on a hiatus, which was my decision just because things kind of got busy for me. So doing a weekly podcast was a bit much, but hopefully roughly around the time this episode airs, we'll probably be back into the swing of things. We do have some things in the works. It is not done, I promise. And yeah, basically it's just a podcast where we talk about the 3DO, like the company, the system, the games behind it, the whole thing. It is such a interesting niche topic to touch that, as far as I know, we were basically the most, to date, the most comprehensive podcast about the system, which is pretty nice. It's very niche, but it's so fascinating to do, which is why I kind of poked Bill to bring it back. So I guess if you want to start, you can start with episode 4, which is where I come into the picture. He did a couple episodes by himself, and then from episode 4 to wherever we are is just us doing the normal. And let's see, if there's an episode I really liked, it was probably the episode on Twisted, which is like a weird 90s game show video game. It was a very interesting experience, and it created a rather interesting episode, I think. So those would probably be the ones I'd look for. Or if you like sports, we talk about Madden and FIFA on there. We have a whole episode dedicated to them, so I can kind of stretch my football muscle a little bit. Go Vikings! But yeah, 3DO experience. It's a lot of fun. We will keep doing it, even though it is just on hiatus for the moment. But it will be back. We have some plans in the works, so it's definitely worth a check.
Or if you want to hear an episode about a game that I think both you and Bill really did not like, there is an episode on a game called PO'd.
Oh, God, that game.
It's the first game that got a hard no from both of you.
Oh, yeah. It's a rough one. It's a rough one. If you want to yell at me on X or Twitter or whatever the hell it's called, I'm at Thrak94 on there. If you have Blue Sky, I'm at Thrak. So if you want to add me there, give me a reason to use the app. That'd be nice. Outside of that, I'm in a couple Discords, just kind of memeing through life. So yeah, that's where you can find me and ask me questions. Ask me about Control. I'll tell you all about it.
The game Control, that is to say, not the concept.
Yes, the game Control. Yes, the Federal Bureau of Control, directed by Jesse Faden.
No podcaster has a concept of control. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this.
How true. We need to constantly say things in the microphones to feel good about ourselves.
Listen to me now. Yes, check out the 3DO experience. It's a really cool show. Thrak is obviously a great guy. Bill is a very great guy. You've heard him on the Inuyasha episode, which was a ton of fun, even if it's not a very great game. You can find all of those in the episode description. I am slowly working through the backlog to update the episode descriptions to make them not look terrible. Podcast Addict in particular looks awful, and I can't figure it out. It looks fine on Spotify. Podcast Addict looks actively bad. I'm looking into it. I'm trying. But look there for more Thrak. Look there for more us. Blue Sky, Twitter, Instagram, Discord, you name it, the Patreon. The Discord in particular, I always try to get folks into our Discord. It makes me feel like I'm doing a real service. I like seeing people hang out there. It's a lot of fun, and it's free. If you wanted to support monetarily, of course, you could go to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. Never expected, but always appreciated. You get some bonuses and extra stuff if you do. It's there if you want it, but it's not required. So, with that, check the episode description for all of those links. Come hang out online. Ask Thrak about Jesse from Control and Talking Guns, and probably David Lynch, because, I mean, how you can't like Control and not like David Lynch, I feel like.
I love David Lynch.
There, called it. And we'll see you next time when we join our heroes as they wake up inside of what are essentially giant human bird cages.
Bye-bye.